So let's start by introducing ourselves. You first.
I'm Jeff Bonar. I'm the CEO and founder of JumpStart Wireless. We're a mobile app platform selling mostly to large companies. We're using unique patented AI technology to automatically generate mobile apps. So we don't write mobile apps, we write software that writes mobile apps. And I'm sure I'll get into more detail as we go, but that's just a little bit about my background. I have a PhD in artificial intelligence and did some professoring a long time back, but have been in software industry for a number of years. I worked at IBM. Sort of my big accomplishments at IBM was my team delivered the first version of WebSphere. So if you're in the IT industry, you've probably heard of WebSphere, though IBM brands everything WebSphere nowadays. But in those days, it was one discrete product. And I also have the distinction, though this is very much a big company, IBM kind of distinction, but funny nonetheless to this crowd. One of my jobs at IBM was to go around when IBM decided to adopt Java as their go-forward systems programming language, replacing C++. I had to go to all the different groups at IBM and kill off all the different, or tell them their project was dead, to kill off the IBM version of Visual Basic, the IBM version of ObjectRex, the IBM version of some other weird thing. The database company was, I don't remember the name, but the database division was coming up with their own systems programming language. So there were 5 different projects inside IBM to replace C++. So I had the distinction of telling all of them, no, Java is going to be the language, not your weird thing. So again, a very big company, IBM kind of job to have.
No, great, Jeff.
Okay.
Thanks for the introduction. So I'm Deepak and Jeff. I'm one of the co-hosts along with Bruno for Information Technology, Small Medium Business. I work as a change management and business transformation professional. I've been doing that for about 10 years. Recently, I have expertise in helping small, medium enterprises adopt new technology to support their business. I've been trained in consulting. I spent about 3 years at Accenture, 2 years at a mid-sized consultancy building their people and change practice, 1 year at a cloud-based consultancy, and now I work independent. So with that said, Jeff, let's get started. Can you tell us how JumpStart Wireless is using mobile technology today to build customer relationships?
Sure, and I guess I'm going to flip back and forth between what we do ourselves and what we enable our customers to do. In fact, in that case, we're a pretty small company, so we don't have a big CRM technology, but we do a lot for our customers in that area. And it tends to be, because mobile is so intimate and it's something you're carrying with you at all times, you can enable field staff to interact with customers and know things about customers that it would be very hard for them to know otherwise.
Okay.
So for example, I'll give you a couple of examples. One of our customers is a big services company. They have 500 trucks nationwide. They do restaurant equipment repair. And they walk into most of their customers and they have a complete inventory of all the equipment at that site. When was the last time it was serviced? What was wrong the last time it was serviced? When preventive maintenance is due on that equipment? They literally know more about the equipment than most of the customers know about the equipment. So that turns out to be enormously valuable for upselling, for selling services, for
cross-selling,
just being able to repair something quickly.
Right.
Because, oh, it's this certain valve at the back corner that was never mounted properly when the equipment was installed. That's the thing that tends to get plugged. And instead of me taking 3 hours to figure that out, I'll check that first, because that was the thing we did the last 3 times we came out to the site.
Right. So it aggregates all that data.
Yeah.
For you to reuse as needed.
Yeah, and all the data is actually stored in SAP, but we can present it to the user as, here's everything you need to know about this customer's location for this call. So the technicians do not need to understand how to use facility maintenance screens of SAP. They just flip to a subscreen of the main application, and there's all that data laid out for them.
So do you ever feel like it's improving like your technicians' capabilities given?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It makes them much more effective, both from a better serving the customer, like they know more that would normally be hard information to get. Another example, all the parts that are in order for this particular customer, they can get access to that and when those parts are supposed to be ready. So instead of having to call someone or guess or make it up, they can just check.
Yeah, so it's like a central source of information that they have access to.
The other thing is it makes them more productive and efficient employees too.
Right.
Because, hey, I'm out here, this piece of equipment needs preventive maintenance 2 weeks from now. How about I just do it now so you don't have to pay for 2 trip charges? So you've upsold and you've served the customer just because you have the right information at your fingertips.
Yeah. Now, is that, so, I mean, to me, it sounds like it's translating the customer value. I mean, do you find that customers are feeling that value? They're realizing that value from that streamlined process and the technology and the capability that this new technician provides?
Well, they certainly get less expensive, more efficient service. So they're not paying for 2 trip charges.
Right, right.
They're certainly getting that. They're also getting, one of the things they do with this customer is they take photographs of the equipment and they kind of have a history of those.
Sure.
So you can show, okay, I was out here
Right.
9 months ago, or someone was out here 9 months ago. Look at how clean that piece of equipment was. Now, look at what it looks like now, and then they take them over, and it's full of dust and and flour, and you know the ovens at Starbucks. You can't believe how dirty those get. And they say, you know, you should be on a service contract. You could, you know, you don't. This is going to blow the whole oven, and we're going to have to replace it. Or I could be cleaning it every 6 months. You should be on a service contract. Now they are upselling, but it's probably saving the customer money in the grand scheme of things. That's going to save the customer money.
Sure, sure. And are you finding now? Do the employees find the technology like, you know, with today's world? I feel like I get turned off by technology if it isn't intuitive, if it isn't user friendly. Are the technicians that are deploying or using this technology, are they finding it user-friendly and intuitive and easy to use?
Well, they always hate it the first day or two, or a lot of them do. Some of them do. So they always resist it at first. Okay. Always.
Always.
Oh, you know, most of them. Always.
How do you get around that?
You just gotta have
hit them over the head with it?
Well, you gotta have management that's sort of committed.
Right.
So we have had technicians scare off management. We've had office managers scare off management. But so you gotta, part of our sales cycle is you gotta have management who are saying, this is how we're doing it, you need to figure it out.
Right, so sponsorship from the top. Critical.
And generally, after a week, you'd have to pry it out of their dead hands. They would never give it up.
That's great.
But there's always a transition period. There's always a time when they're not.
So it's really, so some of that is like bottom up. It's like the technicians pushing their management to say, look, I really need to use this product to help me with my job.
Yeah, there's a mixed thing. So if you have I'm 58, so I can say this. So if you have a 50-year-old manager, they might say, well, you know, my guys aren't computer guys. They're never going to learn how to use this. Meanwhile, their guys are texting all day and Instagramming and using Facebook. They just don't know it. So I think for the average technician, the actual kind of computer skills, they all have them. That's not that big a deal. If you're building a mobile app, table stakes are it's got to be easy to use. It's got to be intuitive. Doesn't happen so much now, but we used to have competitors who would have all-day trainings for their mobile app, and it's like, an all-day training for a mobile app?
Right.
You mean, come on.
Right.
You know, so you obviously the app's wrong if it takes all day to learn how to use it.
No, absolutely.
So you don't see that so much anymore. Most of those companies don't exist anymore.
Yeah,
so,
for good reason.
But that's sort of the old school kind of
approach.
Like that. So it's not that hard to make an app that's usable. So I'd say at this point there's enough skill out there that
Yeah.
maybe I shouldn't sell us so short. It's, usability is a table stakes. If it's not usable,
Right.
you're not even in the game.
Right. Let me move on to the next question.
Sure.
So from a customer point of view, what mobile trends do you see will have a significant impact on the enterprise environment?
People being able to carry around a lot of information that used to only be in the enterprise software. That's just again, there's so many efficiencies possible
Right.
when you do that. Like the carrying around the equipment inventory. There's so much customer service possible when you're doing that.
Right.
So, and you don't have to, people think of it as, oh, well, I can't replicate my entire enterprise database onto the device.
Right.
Well, you don't have to do that. You can do it. One of the things I say about mobility, and this crowd will understand what I'm talking about, it's very denormalized. So you do not need to carry the entire database with all the tables, and you need to carry, I'm going out to the Starbucks on the corner of Prince and whatever, there must be a Starbucks on Prince somewhere. I'm going to do that Starbucks. What information do I need on that call? And I can bring megabytes of information, completely denormalized just for this call, and then throw it away when I'm done with the call.
Right.
So that's that's not only a viable strategy, it's the right strategy. It reduces security issues, you're not carrying your whole customer database with you. It reduces kind of volume of data issues. And it allows the technician to really be a powerful, it gives them a lot of power to serve the customer.
Right. Right.
So I forget what your question was. I kind of went off into
No, that's
okay.
great. It was, I think you answered it. Customer point of view, what mobile trends do you see will have a significant impact on the enterprise environment?
Oh, right. So carrying lots of data. I think voice recognition over the next 5 years, enterprise apps that use limited vocabulary voice recognition will be really important. One of the biggest barriers our users and customers still have is typing stuff in.
Sure.
To the extent you can eliminate typing in, that's going to be really valuable.
Sure.
The one other thing I say, which I don't know, no, this may be controversial, but I think Google Glass is really an enterprise app device. It's not so much a consumer app device. Now, maybe I don't have enough imagination for what consumers ultimately can do with it, but I'll tell you, you give it to someone who's doing inspections, and they can look at a piece of equipment or look at a barcode or look at a serial number and pull up information, that'd be so great. I mean, I can look at something and then call the office and ask a senior person, hey, what's going on with this? I've never seen one of these before. It would transform. I mean, with a couple of our customers, we're already talking about it. It's a little too out there for them.
Right.
But a year or two from now, I think we'll be doing it.
I mean, would you see like JumpStart Wireless potentially using that?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just at some level, it's just another UI.
Right.
But to me, that's a far more natural use case for Google Glass than, hey, I'm at a cocktail party and I want to find out something about Lloyd's. How do I know Lloyd?
Right. I mean, that's a good segue to one of the next questions. How can small, medium businesses and IT organizations best leverage mobile technology? So we talked about Google Glass a little bit, right, as a possibility. Mm-hmm. You may want to say more about that, but how can they best leverage mobile technology? What would be a good place to start?
Yeah, so I would say let's start with where the return on investment is. So a lot of people have this sort of fixed idea about, mobility, that means I'm going to carry all my paperwork with me, or I'm going to carry the reference manual, or I'm going to swipe credit cards.
Right.
Like they have some fixed idea. And I would say, well, where's the ROI in your business? So what would be valuable to the business people in your organization? And that's what you should be mobilizing.
Right.
When Ecolab started, they wanted to be able to meet service level agreements, and be able to tell a customer when someone was going to be there. And so there were a couple of timestamps. That's all they had initially, was a couple of timestamps on Java phones. That was their first mobile app.
Right.
But it was a big ROI value for them because they could deliver far more reliable, manageable service than any of their competitors, because they always knew where their technicians were. They always had a good idea when they were going to be there.
Right.
And they could bill out, they knew how many hours they had worked on a given job.
Yeah.
And so they started, so it was brilliant. They started with where the biggest ROI was.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, you think about return on investment on a technology, right, guys? And you think, well, then what's the return on investment with Google Glass? Or what's Jeff Bezos going after when he's trying to cut down the supply chain and he wants to use, mechanical drones to cut down that process time? Or was Steve Jobs and Apple thinking about return on investment when they came out with the iPhone or the iPad or any of those devices? I mean, did they start with that end in mind, or was it something else?
I don't know about consumer stuff. I just don't know. I'm not sure.
That's not
so I can say, if you want to have a successful mobile project at a business, look and see what your business people consider important, and then deliver that.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
So again, in consumer stuff, I wish I had better insight on that, but I don't pretend to know.
That's great. Yeah. What are some of the things that you're doing or implementing to improve the effectiveness of services provided to your customers?
One thing we've put a lot of attention on lately is dashboards. So the ability to integrate the data that's coming back. So you got people out in the field, they're doing things, you have timestamps, you have GPS stamps, you have photographs. Okay, well, how can I make that data more accessible to the management?
Right.
So we worked with one company to profile their employees. Some of them are super productive and some of them are not productive. Well, what's the difference between the productive ones and the non-productive ones? And how could we coach the non-productive ones in being more productive? And so they came up with sort of a profile chart. It's sort of like a histogram. So time runs down the graph, and then there's like a profile of what did they do the first hour, what did they do the second hour, with different color codes for different activities. And you could see, I see what the productive guys are doing, and I see what the non-productive guys are not doing. And then, so that was phase one of the dashboard. Then they said, why, this is too many charts to look through. I want an exception report where anyone that's behaving like a non-productive person, I want to see just them. So they now have a distilled down version, so it's sort of like one level of processing the data, and now there's like a second level of processing data. So instead of looking at everyone's chart, they only look at the hours that Jeff and Deepak weren't performing very effectively. Right. And I can say, okay, hey, Deepak, all afternoon you were non-productive. What is going,
Yeah, no, right.
Okay.
It turns into a performance management issue. Yeah, I get it.
So that kind of stuff is really important to the customers. And,
that's great.
And it's a way we can add more value. So it isn't so much the mobility, but the data the mobility provides that can then be used in smart ways.
For managerial decision making, for example. So are you finding that you're outsourcing that capability, or are you bringing like a resource in to come up with those dashboard and that type of analytics that you can provide?
Mostly we're doing it ourselves.
Okay.
But I don't think that's necessarily so smart. I would like to outsource it or find some kind of a dashboard package we could use. I just haven't found one yet.
Yeah, and that sounds like that sounds like very like a serious specialty though. I mean, for a company to do
Agreed.
that. I'm sure it's out there though.
Well, you look at the big names like the
Google
people who
Analytics or
well, no, I'm thinking more like the packages. It's a Canadian company. They were known for report writers and databases 15 years ago, but now they're more like analytics. Anyway, Most of the products I know of are very expensive and very complicated.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and I'm looking for something simpler and lighter weight.
Yeah, right. That's worth the cost. And that brings up a fresh question here. What would you say is your top 3 business or IT priorities for your customers in 2014?
Better analytics tools
Dashboarding.
that we can sort of incorporate without having to do a lot of coding ourselves.
Right, absolutely.
Scaling the product up. We're probably going to triple our user base this year, and there's all kinds of scaling problems we're dealing with. So leveraging tools that Amazon, all our customers are in Amazon cloud now.
Oh,
Leveraging
great.
tools they provide. We're just starting to learn how to use some of these tools, so that's part of it.
Okay.
Um,
So dashboarding, scalability, and when you say scalability, do you mean like with current customers, like getting more employees to use the app? Are you looking at new customers?
It isn't so much adding new users. It's quickly putting a new customer up
Okay.
without having to kind of reshuffle. And
Sure.
so, I mean, part of the core of our software is everyone's running on the same software, even though they have different apps.
Right.
But there's still complexities of like, well, there's some special security link to the SAP through their firewall to SAP, and that means we have to set them up special. So dealing with all those special cases and keeping the special cases to as small a pile as possible.
Okay. Right. So exceptions versus
Right.
being able to scale with the majority.
Yeah.
Let's see here. If you could see 5 years into the future of technology, what do you see?
Well, voice recognition,
Voice recognition, you mentioned.
more intimate interfaces like Google Glass, that kind of a.
Mobile interfaces for
Right.
customers, for businesses.
I probably don't have to convince anyone here, but the days of owning your own server are completely dead.
So moving to the cloud.
Completely, yeah. It's just not even the level of service we can provide. I mean, we can, again, I'm probably selling to people who already know this, but our customer wants to test something. We spin up a new server. 5 or 10 minutes later, they can test it. And if it works out great, we'll leave that new server up and turn off the old one. And it's just like, in the old days, you have to buy a server, you have to spend 2 weeks configuring it. It's just such a different world that we have this sort of access to pay by the hour servers.
Yeah.
It's
so cloud is very hot.
Yeah.
I'm actually doing some cloud work now. All right. After years, one question I have for you is, after years of focusing on delivering value to the business, why is IT largely still viewed as a cost center?
Well, here's the bad news. Most of the IT people we deal with, they're not focused on delivering value to the business.
Okay.
They're focused on, at best, keeping the system stable and smooth, which is not a bad thing to be focused on, but it's not delivering value per se to the business. And at worst, IT is, I don't want to change anything because anything new that comes in here is a problem for me because I have to deal with it.
Well, so yeah, that's interesting.
So what I would say is, if IT really wants to not be a cost center, they got to get focused on what the business problems are and solve business problems, not solve IT problems.
That's interesting. You said that anything that comes new in here, they don't want to deal with. Like, where is that coming from, and why would you think?
Oh,
would
because
feel
they
that
get
way?
fired. If things screw up, they get fired. So if you install a new email system and it doesn't run smooth, they fire them.
Yeah, but I mean, troubleshooting is part of the IT process, right?
I'm saying I don't think it's entirely the IT department's fault, because the trend of things has been, you're not rewarded for being a visionary about how you could best use new technology. You're rewarded for everything working smoothly, effortlessly, with no hiccups.
Right. So maybe the incentives aren't aligned in certain companies is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. So we, we have different modes when we engage with a new customer. One mode is it actually is brought in by an IT person, but that's very rare.
Okay.
More typically, it's brought in by a business person. And then the IT department either can be, okay, if you say you want it, I'll work with it and we'll do it. But there's also a mode of, no, it's going to break this, it's going to break that, we don't know. Microsoft's going to have the same thing next year, so we're going to wait because it'll be more compatible. We had a million excuses from
So
IT departments.
Just general hemming and hawing.
Yes, yeah.
All right. So given your position, how important do you think is it for IT leaders to do marketing and advertising?
Let me say one more thing about the last thing.
The cost
and
center.
this hopefully is like a lesson learned. We used to we always prepare an ROI for our customer.
That's great.
Why would you want to do mobile? What's the value? You're going to save 15 minutes for every call. You do 3 calls a day. You bill out your people $100 an hour.
Right.
So you can actually calculate how much money this is,
Sure.
in hard savings.
Sure.
Or extra billing. We give that to the person, and unless we really, really, really push hard, they don't often bring it to the meeting with executives to get approval for the project.
Okay. Even though you're showing the return on investment.
The value of the mobile system seems so self-evident to them that they say, of course the money's there. But you go into the CFO who doesn't know anything about technology, and you don't have the numbers and how you calculated them, you get the project shut down. So we've just we pound on our people, pound on our champions inside a company. You got to bring the ROI. You got to have that worked out. You got to present that because that's what your executives are going to care about.
Right.
And 90% of the time, that is what the executives care about. They don't care anything about the technology.
Right. Bruno and I talking about Shark Tank. Yeah, that's all about the money, right? That's all Kevin O'Leary talks about, right? So, so this cost center thing, they got to show value to the business.
Exactly. So I'll tell one more story. The one of our customers. So we generate a lot of data, and our customers had some financial analysts looking at the data and said, where the guys show up and they don't start billing for 15 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes. 10 or 15 minutes after they show up, they turn the clock on. And it's in our contract that we bill for all the time we're there. Why aren't they turning the clock on? Well, they're getting the parts they're getting the tools out of the truck. They're schmoozing with the manager. They're calling about parts. Well, they still should be turning the clock on.
Right.
So we changed the app. So using our technology, took us about 3 hours. We changed the app so that the clock starts when the GPS position aligns with the location.
Right.
They can still change it. If they want, they can still change it.
But that's the default.
Exactly.
Right.
So they estimate that that'll deliver $20 million more revenue this year.
Wow.
We put that in place early 2014. Okay, so
it's almost like you're saying, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost like you're saying people are inherently lazy. Because the GPS starts the clock, right?
Right.
They could have made the default otherwise, right? They could have made it user, the user set it up, start the clock as soon as he gets there. But I'm not hearing that proactivity is what I'm saying.
Well, there's that, but I think there's it's just let's study the business process. It's inherent in being a human being that you show up and you hang out a little bit. That's sort of just part of the.
That's just the way it have a smoke, cup of coffee.
Exactly.
Right.
Eat
the company's time.
So since it's in our contract that we bill for the entire time we're there,
makes sense.
Let's turn the clock on.
Right.
So I see it more as the executives noticing what was going on and then being able to proactively fix the process so that they're taking advantage of it.
Absolutely. I'm sure the executives want that for sure with the return on investment idea. 2 more questions before we turn it to the audience. Given your position, how important do you think it is for IT leaders to do marketing and advertising of the products and services they deliver for their companies?
Critical, totally critical.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
So IT leaders or IT management or even IT professionals need to do marketing and advertising outside of just doing their day-to-day jobs? Tell
That's
me
what
more
I
about
say.
that.
Yeah, well, it's like, you want to be a cost center or you want to be a value add? So if you want to be a value add, you better start talking about it. So I'm clear that most IT people are adding value to the business. You make, the email server work better, everyone's going to benefit from that.
Right.
But you better be talking about it.
So
So if you're not promoting it, there isn't anyone else in the company who's going to promote it. They're just going to complain when it doesn't work. So
Right.
I think it's inherent, probably in any job, but certainly in IT, that you're explaining it to people, you're telling stories about the value add, you're making choices based on what's going to best serve your customer, your company, and then promoting, the reason we selected this was because it better matches our business model,
Right.
and it's going to save our salespeople an hour a week.
Right.
And-
So we're not talking about being conceited or arrogant, but just really getting out there and promoting
Exactly.
for the work that they do. So,
Exactly.
I mean, it sounds like, of course, they probably don't want to come off as a used car salesman, but they do want to promote or market or advertise some of the great work that they do. Interesting. So that's a skill or a capability that it's important that they have.
Yes, I would say.
Last question before we move to the audience. Given your experience leading JumpStart Wireless, what's one piece of advice that comes to mind that you'd offer other IT leaders?
Well, definitely the value of constructing an ROI case.
Okay,
and
return on investment.
promoting it. Yeah, do the spreadsheet, model it. Get people's buy-in. I think we could. If this was in place, we could save 15 minutes every time you close a sale. And you have 30 people on the phone closing sales all day. Okay, so 30 times, 15 minutes times 20 sales closed a day. You do that calculation and figure out what the value is, and then sell that to the company.
Right. So it's not just about being an information technology professional, but also like a business leader or a business professional, either doing marketing or advertising or even providing return on investment information.
Yeah.
You got to be good at both, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and again, I wouldn't necessarily say marketing or advertising.
No, right.
Excuse me. But having the case study,
Right.
being able to tell good war stories about, hey, because we had this system in place, we were able to blah, 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 blah. And that saved the company $20,000 that month. And that stuff's important.
Yeah.
It's in the world of business, you need to be able to sell.
Right.
And that's what I mean by selling.
Yeah. No, great. Well, thank you so much for your time. Let's move to the audience. Any questions for Jeff?
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, I have a question. How do you see the leveraging mobile technology in emerging markets or in developing countries like the Caribbean and Africa?
So, to repeat it since I have the mic here, mobile technology in developing countries. Is that right?
Well, in general, and this is not just for a developing country, but I think it applies in particular, the higher value the transaction that's going on, so you have someone out in the field, working in the field, the higher value the transaction, the more likely mobile technology is going to give you a big payoff. So if you're repairing medical equipment, that's better than, cleaning an office, just as an example. So mobile apps for having janitors track their time, probably not as good a payoff as mobile apps for people who repair X-ray equipment, just as an example. So you want to look at where's the value in the emerging market, and where there's more valuable transactions going on. Those are the things you want to mobilize. at this point, most phones can do mobile apps. Even low-end feature phones can do basic mobile apps. So it's more, and more and more smartphones are going to be pervasive. Even there'll be low-end smartphones, so more cost-effective smartphones. So we haven't had a lot of success selling in the emerging markets because I think we've been too early. But over the next couple of years, I think there'll be a lot of activity there. The nice thing about an emerging market is mobile phones are the infrastructure. It's not like you're competing with hardwired internet. In most cases, you're not, or in many cases, the hardwired internet's not pervasive. But everyone carrying a phone with some kind of simple browser is pervasive. So I'm more kind of giving you some random thoughts about it. But mobile banking is an example of a place where we think there's a lot of value. It's a little tricky though, because besides the security issues, which are very big, every big bank wants to control everything. So it's hard for a smaller company to break into it. So we've just found, sort of, if Citibank doesn't entirely control it, if the branch of Citibank that does payments in emergent markets doesn't control it entirely, they're not interested in working with you. So mobile healthcare is another place where I think there's just a lot of value added, high value transactions, and the kind of smartphones that everyone has now, or the kind of phones everyone has, can do simple basic transactions.
And what about the security of those transmissions?
If you get the right partner, security is not a hard thing to do. I want to take that back. Security is hard to get right, but the technology is all there to do it. You'd be shocked at how many of our customers have no password control, just the most basic, simple security stuff they're not doing. So no wonder they have security holes. When the big credit card leaks and stuff like that, they were doing stupid stuff. It's not like some clever hackers got through a really well done system. No, they had no security at all, and someone broke it. So I would say, if you get the right partner you're working with, security is very solvable now.
Any other questions for Jeff?
Yes. What do you find, to maybe answer this question, the biggest challenge since you're dealing with mobile apps, new technology? You have a lot of people who are, quote, old school. So how do you convince that person who is not, as you said, computer savvy, to go with your product? Granted, you can use the ROI model, which you stated, but still, they still reluctant to change. How did you deal with that issue?
Let me repeat the question. So how do you convince older folks to use mobile technology?
Generally it's by the ROI. You make I'll tell you one story about that. We were working with a big construction company, and there was a certain manager who was saying, this is crazy. Every manager in our company gets a laptop. That's free. Why don't I'll just do things on web pages on the laptop? What do I need mobile for? And the real problem there was, they all get a laptop. It sits in their truck or at home, and they use it at night. So that doesn't do any good on the job at all. But leaving that aside, the obvious question was, well, who's paying for those laptops? And it's like, I don't know. Just everyone gets issued a laptop. And I said, okay, I need to talk to the person who's paying for the laptops, because you're not going to listen. It's like,
Right.
Everyone gets a phone too, and they could be doing most of their key transactions on the phone. So so I think it's ROI. I think ultimately it's ROI.
Yeah, so just convincing the older generation that return on investment.
And generally, at this point, I think the case is kind of made. You don't have to convince people that their employees use phones all day to text people and things like that. That no longer is it considered an esoteric technology.
Last question for Jeff. Any other questions? Yeah.
Why you decided to make a software which makes mobile apps and not just do mobile apps directly?
Be two reasons. One is it's expensive to do them directly. One of our customers is a big amusement park chain. They have 19 parks and 1,000 attractions, each of which has its own custom inspection. Literally, to do it with conventional technology, they would have to write 1,000 different apps, which is insane. You know, it's just not going to happen. So with JumpStart, we sort of wired things up a little bit, and we can generate the 1,000 different apps. So there's they need a unified infrastructure. They need one place to manage it, and it's a problem that can't be solved using conventional app writing. The second thing is, it gives them, so there's the cost, and then there's the level of control. I was talking 2 weeks ago to the CIO of a big hospital chain. And he said that he has 200 requests for mobile apps from all the different departments of the health system. You know, the diabetes care group wants an app, and the anesthesiologists want an app, and the people who give flu shots go out to the mall and give a flu shot. They want an app.
And that's all customized for those
Yeah,
specific doctor professionals.
And essentially, it's replacing a paper form. You know, every one of these tasks, there's some paper form they fill out all day, every day. So they all want an app. And he said, we have budget to write 2 apps. We have 200 requests, and we have budget to write 2 of them. So, and they need to control them. They need to kind of make sure the data ends up in the right place and everything like that. So we can solve a problem for that CIO that conventional technology just can't solve.
Thank you.
Well, one more question? I think that was one.
Yeah, I have,
Yeah, please.
Well, this might be slightly long, but when you talk about ROI, right? I mean, and it seems like you work in a lot of different businesses. So how do you know the business well enough that you can come up with a good pitch in the first place? Because that seems like that would be a challenge.
So business well enough to make a pitch.
Here's the truth of it, and I can say this to an IT crowd. It's harder to say it to a business crowd. When you send a nurse out to change someone's wound dressing after heart surgery, so if someone has heart surgery, they go home after a few days, and then a nurse comes out and changes their dressing for a couple of weeks or 2 weeks or whatever. That really isn't all that different than sending someone out to repair an oven at Starbucks. You know, there's enormous similarities between those jobs. There are different titles, different training, different, billing methods, all that, but a lot of similarity. So we have a lot of experience in understanding the nature of mobile work, and particularly build mobile work. So we're leveraging that. In fact, that's what the AI is leveraging too, the exact same principle. So I have ROI spreadsheets that I can go to and say, they call it this, so I just change the labels and stuff like that, but the formulas still work. So that's how. And if you get someone at the company who really can clue you in on the business, you can learn things about particularities of their business, and that wouldn't necessarily apply elsewhere, but they'll help you fit it into the spreadsheet. You do have to work with someone there.
Well, great. Jeff Bonar, CEO of JumpStart Wireless. Thank you.